Starting off at number 10 now, we have Cropsey. Some of you guys may have heard me talk about this one before. It's the story of the boogeyman of Staten Island. He was rumored to be a homicidal maniac who escaped from a mental asylum. He would hunt for children and drag them back to the ruins of a hospital where he lived. Witnesses always said that he had a hook for a hand. These stories were meant to scare kids, perhaps even told to them by their own parents who wanted them to be more wary of strangers. Then, in 1972, the boogeyman became real. News broke of a real-life corpsey man called Andre Rand. He was a former janitor at the local school for mentally disabled children. Rand was arrested in connection with the disappearance of Jennifer Schweiger, a 12-year-old girl with Down syndrome. He lost his job over the case and moved into the now abandoned school that he used to work in. He was eventually convicted of murder, and police connected him to the disappearance of 4 other children. No bodies were ever recovered. Moving on now to number 9, guys, we have the Bunny Man. I talked about this legend in my West Virginia video, if you remember. The story goes that in 1904 a mental asylum closed down. While transferring inmates to a new facility, one of the buses crashed. Most of the people in it were killed or captured trying to escape, but one actually did escape, known as the Bunny Man. He would then roam the land, hunting rabbits and then leaving their half-eaten carcasses for the locals to find. Sometimes they will be hanging from a tree or a bridge. Although there are parts of the story that just don't add up, something strange happened in 1970. A couple driving their car at night had an axe thrown through their window by a man in a bunny suit. 2 weeks later, another man found an axe-wielding guy in a bunny suit chopping wood nearby who was gone by the time police arrived. Are these linked together somehow? Is there more truth to this than meets the eye? Moving on now to number 8, we have the body under the bed. Ever since hotels and motels have become a common part of society, people have swapped stories about guests who discovered that the mattress they were sleeping on was either above or even stuffed with the body of a murder victim. A grisly tale for sure, but one that was confined to the realms of myths and legend. Then, in 1999, a case in Colorado occurred involving a couple who slept on a mattress containing a body. The police kept the details of that close to their chest, but in 2010 a huge story broke when guests at a Memphis motel discovered they had been sleeping above the body of Sony Millbrook, a missing person at the time. Her boyfriend, Lakeith Moody, was convicted of the crime. Many people were horrified and vowed to give their hotel beds a closer inspection next time. Next up at number 7 now, guys, we have the Maine Robber. That's M-A-I-N-E. The state. For many years, visitors to Maine's North Pond have reported that something strange was going on there. Time after time, people reported that things were going missing. Not just one person, one time, many people, many times. Batteries and food would vanish from cabins, while flashlights just disappeared from camping tents. People thought either the earth itself was swallowing it all up, or there was a thief at work. It turns out they were right about that. In 2013, a game warden discovered Christopher Knight living alone in the woods. For 27 years, this man had been there watching hikers, canoeists and other visitors to the area. When taken in for questioning, Knight admitted that he was responsible for around 40 robberies a year. I mean, stealing batteries is one thing, but I feel like if you were being watched all those years and then you were proven right about it, that would be even creepier. At the number 6 spot now, we have the Falling Lawyer. Now, I've lived in Toronto for quite a few years now, and I've personally heard this story floating around the place, but I never thought it was actually true until now. They say that years ago there was a lawyer who loved to show off how strong his office windows were in his building that overlooked the city. Every time someone came to visit, he would take a long run up, jump, and hurl himself right into the window. Sure enough, the window would remain intact, although we'll never know if this actually impressed his visitors. Well, this lawyer was real, and his name was Gary Hoy. He was a senior partner at his firm with an office on the 24th floor. On July 9th, 1993, some law students came to visit. He took his usual leap at the window, but this time, after years of it being weakened, it smashed. Gary plummeted to his death, and the improbable story became somewhat of a local legend. Next up at number 5 now, we have the Puebla's secrets. For many years, longer than people can even remember, the people of Puebla in Mexico have talked about the tunnels. Secret tunnels that were built under their city by the Spanish conquistadors in the 1500s. It's been almost half a millennia since then, and the stories became legend. People looked for them, but they found nothing. The tunnels became a myth, something to scare the kids into believing there was a dark maze of caverns beneath them. In 2014, construction workers were in the middle of an urban remodeling project when they stumbled upon an old tunnel. Surely the legends weren't true. The Puebla History Center took over the site to investigate, and yes, it was the fabled tunnels people had spoken about. They determined the tunnels were built in 1531, right after the city was founded. Members of the Catholic Church supposedly used the tunnels to transport treasure and other property in and out of the city without people knowing about it. Part of the tunnels are now open to the public, giving you the chance to walk through the dark halls of an urban legend that came true. Coming in number 4 now, guys, we have the alligators. I definitely talked about this one in our New York urban legends video. Many years ago in New York, people would say that there were alligators in the sewers below the city. They said a young boy once flushed his pet alligator down the toilet. Years later, he reached into the sewer grate to retrieve a lost baseball. At that moment, a fully grown alligator leapt up from below and ripped his arm clean off, the same alligator he had flushed away. Many people dismissed the whole story. Alligators, New York, crazy. However, in 1959, Teddy May, the commissioner of New York during the time of these rumors, wrote about the alligators in his tell-all book. He said that he and his inspectors did find alligators in the New York sewers in 1935. They were up to 2 feet in size. It took 2 years for them to clear them all out, more than enough time for the facts to get blurred with fiction. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the dog boy. For many people in Arkansas, they know the stories of the dog boy. Kids swap tales of a werewolf-like man who roams around the town of Quitman. Some even say they've seen him. Many of them might not know that the story is somewhat based in real life. Gerald Bettis was born in Quitman in 1954. By the time he was a young boy, the neighbors were already calling him evil. They said he liked to capture stray animals and torture them in twisted experiments. As he got older, he turned on his parents, tormenting them until, at the age of 27, his dead father was found in his home. The newspapers said it was illness, but others said it was murder. Bettis then kept his mother in the house until she was finally taken away and placed in protective custody. His mother testified against him and he was given life in prison, where he died a few years later. They say that his spirit still haunts that house and that he's often seen roaming the area as a ghost on all fours with shaggy hair like a dog. At the number 2 spot now, guys, we have Charlie No Face. Some of you may have heard me talk about this one in my Pennsylvanian video. Charlie No Face is the story of a boy called Charlie who once got electrocuted while climbing on an electric pole to try and see into a bird's nest. He was horrifically disfigured. His face had practically melted off. Eyes, nose, mouth, one of his ears and one of his arms all completely gone. It also turned his skin a sickly green. Somehow he survived and lived out his life in the small town, rarely showing his face to the other locals. People would share the story of Charlie No Face, but because nobody saw him, the story became nothing more than an urban legend. But it wasn't. The story was actually true, all except for the name. Charlie's real name was Raymond Robinson. He was friendly to people whenever they saw him, and he wasn't responsible for the many hauntings that became associated with the legend. And finally, number 1 now, we have Polybius. You may remember this from my video game Urban Legends video. Polybius was the name of an arcade game which kids in Portland got addicted to in 1981. Whenever they were forced off it, they felt nauseous, stressed, or even had seizures. Some people noticed the game was being serviced a lot more than usual. Instead of once a month, Polybius was being checked by men in black suits every single week. They would copy its hard drive, leave all of the money, and then be gone until the next week. People believed they were from the CIA, and that Polybius was all part of a mind control program that sent subliminal messages to its players. While a lot of this is debatable, there really was a kid who got sick during an arcade marathon contest in Portland in 1981. A few days after that, federal agents really did seize a load of arcade cabinets. They said it was all part of a major gambling bust. This is where people tend to differ in opinion. Some say that the story of Polybius was inspired by the events, others say the events are proof of the story.
Coming in number 10, we have Men in Black. I mean, where do you think the idea of the smash hit comedy starring Will Smith came from? You thought it was an original idea?
Yo, I thought it was an original idea. I thought Will Smith is a genius.
No way, man.
Well, let's be honest, nothing is original anymore. As Picasso said, a good artist creates things, a great artist just steals everything.
I'm pretty sure that he actually stole that line too. Well, the urban legend of the Men in Black is pretty in line with the movie. I don't think it's as fantastical or as heroic, but the idea is that there are secret government agents all throughout the US who will come find you if you have any sort of contact with extraterrestrials.
They monitor the planet and it's up to them to make sure that they don't learn about aliens.
There have been many reports from people saying that they've seen some strange thing in the sky or that something landed in their backyard and then it takes off, and then the next day a couple dudes in black suits come in who present themselves as FBI agents, and they'll come to their house and ask them some very strange questions. And even in some cases they can be threatened or things could get quite ugly.
Well, threats from strange dudes in a black suit, yeah, that would work well for me. I'm threatened by anything. I'll keep all my alien secrets to myself after something like that. Thank you very much. If I see something in my backyard, I'm reporting it to nobody.
And guys, make sure you hit that like button because it really helps us out.
All right, let's move right along. Number 9, we have the Hookman.
Hush now. No more screaming, no more running. It's time to die.
The Hookman is such a famous urban legend. Not one, but 2 movies were made about this urban legend. Coming in number 8, we have skinwalkers. This is one of the oldest Native American legends, and the legend has stretched into our folklore as we see skinwalkers represented in television and movies all the time.
The true form of a skinwalker is unknown. I mean, Che right here could be a skinwalker right now. We don't know his true form. Well, some people say that they start off as humans and then they get the ability to transform, and others say they are truly beasts who can turn into humans and other creatures to try to fool us.
But at the end of the day, does it really matter what the true form of a shapeshifter is? They can become whatever they want. You think after being a certain form for a while, you forget what it's like to be your true self. It would be like method acting when you get too into a role and you can't remember who you really are.
Well, maybe Daniel Day-Lewis is a skinwalker and he's just not as evil as the rest.
Skinwalkers have been known to use their powers of transformation to lure people into traps and kill them. Sometimes it's said that they can use parts of dead humans as food, and other stories tell of them needing human parts for rituals to continue their shape-shifting ways.
And at number 7, the abominable snowman.
Abominable snowman sighting in Spain caught on camera. That's right, folks. The proof the world has been waiting for has finally been uploaded. A Sasquatch, or Yeti, or abominable snowman, or just plain old Bigfoot, whatever you want to call him, has been spotted, supposedly.
There are so many clips just like the one you just saw on YouTube. You can check it out for yourselves. Well, we think that this is the best footage we've ever seen of this thing.
Coming in at number 6, we have the Bunny Man. There are several different stories of the Bunny Man, and almost all of them are gruesome. The most common is that he's a man who will walk through dark alleys or in the forest or anywhere with poor visibility, and he will follow people. He sports a bunny mask and has a massive axe. In the shadows, he creeps slowly, watches his prey, and waiting for the moment when they aren't protected. In those few moments when their guard is lowered, he will spring out and slam his axe into their face, taking their body back into the darkness. There have been some iterations of the Bunny Man that say he doesn't wear a mask, but his face has been horribly mutilated to make it look as if it was a bunny's. Skin has been grafted onto his head to resemble ears, surgery done on his nose and lips to reveal buck teeth and a rabbit-like nose, and disgusting scarring all over his once human image. This disfiguration that happened to him is what caused him to go mad.
Moving right along just like that, number 5, Mothman.
Hey, is it possible the famous Mothman of West Virginia could be a mysterious giant eagle? Or is it still just a big, mysterious unknown?
The Mothman of West Virginia has been a long-time urban legend dating back to the 60s, and there has been several movies and documentaries based on this creature, along with a ton of real people recounting their experiences and sharing their pictures and videos. It's such a crazy urban legend that, you know what, it might be true after all.
The sightings of Mothman continued for months throughout the Point Pleasant area. The Mothman was once seen again on the Silver Bridge, and many people believe that the creature was trying to warn people.
And at number 4, we have Baby Train. Well, let's step away from the horrifying urban legends for a second to think about something that could be true and has been a tale told all over America.
Even though the baby train sounds like something where people would sell babies to the highest bidder, this urban legend is much more wholesome.
Now, this urban legend is attached to a more forgotten time, which makes it both hard to prove and disprove.
But it's the idea of small towns that were positioned close to train stations.
These towns were so close that when the trains came in and blew its steam whistle, everyone could hear.
Now, for some of these places, they would have an early morning train come through town. If it would blow its whistle around 5 a.m., this would wake up the whole town. For most of these fine folks, 5 a.m. was too early to get up, but too late to go back to sleep.
So all of these people waking up next to their partner decided to just make a little hanky-panky.
This was a time before we had phones and Netflix. There was nothing else to do.
So this idea of this urban legend is that the towns that had the baby train would see a baby boom from all of the early morning, whoopies.
These people are reproducing faster than Joey Chestnut clears a plate of food.
Moving into number 3, we have the New Jersey Devil. Have you guys heard of this?
Claiming that this child would be the devil. When the night came that Jane went into labor, there was a terrible storm that shook the entire house as her friends and family gathered to help her through the pregnancy. The child was born normal, but it began to change into a deformed monstrosity. Its feet turned into hooves, its head resembled a goat. Leathery wings sprouted from its back, and a forked tail whipped violently around the room. The child screamed and thrashed its tail at anyone trying to hold it down.
This is a crazy tale that might actually just be true, considering the NHL team is named the New Jersey Devils. Could this be because of this urban legend?
Rumor has it a woman had her 13th baby and said, "Let the child be the devil."
Although they tried to exorcise it, shoot it, and kill it, it was deemed indestructible. And there have been 13 sightings of this creature throughout history, so it's gotta be true. 13 people have seen it.
Coming in number 2, we have Charman. We had a couple sweet points in a row, and that's the only nice ones you're gonna get.
For a second I thought you were gonna say Charmander, because I was like, that's real. Pokemon are real.
They are.
But in this situation, we're talking about Charman, which isn't Charmander. Well, Charman is one of the most horrifying urban legends to come out of America. It combines some classic tales with some very specific details that make it seem like the whole thing could be true.
The story starts back in 1948. There was a house fire. A father and his son tried to escape unharmed, but the flames are too strong, and the two of them are burned all over their body. While waiting for help to arrive, the son is looking at his disfigured self and loses his mind. He then kills his own father.
Is this real life right now? When help eventually does arrive, the son lays on the ground and the police think that the boy, well, he's dead from how badly he's burnt. They leave for a moment and uses this as an opportunity to escape.
From this point, he has to live in the woods, hunting down people and killing them, taking what he can so he can continue to survive in the wilderness and feed his insane bloodlust without anyone finding him. And coming in the number 1 spot, we have the Boggy Creek Monster, aka Bigfoot, aka the Southern Sasquatch.
In the early 1970s, the media had a field day about a creature known as the Boggy Creek Monster, aka the Southern Sasquatch. The Boggy Creek Monster was being reported on in the news because it was accused of attacking a local family, as well as destroying and stalking livestock.
This one tops our list because this might be the most famous urban legend creature that might be real of all time.
Have you spotted one before?
A Sasquatch?
Yeah.
Real life?
Yeah.
No. Have you?
No. I wanted the anticipation to be like, oh, has he? No.
And it was like, absolutely.
I've never seen it.
No.
Well, there's been 5 feature films that have been made about this specific folklore, urban legend, and countless other documentaries exist as well.
The whole town has even turned this guy into a tourist attraction in the surrounding towns.
Okay, at number 10, over in Maine, the man in the woods. A rumor in Maine's North Pond area went around that someone lived in the woods. People who camped or had vacations would have items go missing, and while the rumor persisted, it was often dismissed. Well, that was up until a game warden confronted a man living alone in the woods in 2013. Christopher Knight had been living alone in the woods for 27 years and admitted that he was behind an average of 40 robberies a year. He kept tabs on the people visiting the area, took their things, and did his own thing without notice for nearly 3 decades. So when you think something goes missing and someone just says you lost it, Maybe not. On to number 9. This urban legend comes from the urban center of Toronto. At number 9, the leaping lawyer. Around Toronto, you may hear the story of a lawyer who impressed articling students by running into windows to show how strong they were, until one day he broke the window and fell to his death. Now, this isn't just a story for the purpose of illustrating a lesson, this actually happened. Gary Hoy was known as one of the best and brightest at his law office. Then, after a reoccurring practice of running at windows, one day the pane popped loose. He fell from the 24th floor of the TD Center on July 9th in 1993. The self-defenestration led to his death at the age of 39. Now, the articling students he was trying to impress got much more than they bargained for, so take from this. You are not immortal, the worst can happen, and most importantly, look up to see if the building you're in is up to code to handle your weight being thrown out a window before you try it. Stay safe. And now next, at number 8, a more recent Toronto legend, Rubber Boots Man. One of Toronto's iconic myths and urban legends, just like that Spider-Man figure that rides the subway, is Rubber Boots Man. You don't know if it's true until you see him for yourself, but it's a great look. I've seen him probably a dozen times. If you've been walking around Toronto, you may have spotted him yourself. He's donning either a shirt or sweater with "I hate rubber boots" on it in all caps, and the man is wearing rubber boots. The irony is amazing. And his explanation is, "I don't really hate rubber boots, of course. Indeed, I've been totally obsessed by them my entire life, but it's fun to walk around in public, not just in my boots, but with the ironic statement, 'I hate rubber boots,' plastered across my chest." And gotta admit, the guy's a comedy legend. You gotta commit to the bit, baby. And he did. And that's how he is now an urban legend. You can become one too. Lesson for you. Let's move on to number 7. Number 7 is Le Loyon, also known as the Ghost of Malls. Sorry if my French isn't up to snuff. In the Malls forest in Switzerland, an urban legend circulated about a mysterious figure who walked around in a camouflage boiler suit and a gas mask that covered their whole face. Those native to the area gave him the name Le Loyon, as he was thought of as a ghost story and just that. And that was until 2013. That year, a photo was snapped of the local legend, and then people tried to search through the forest to find him. Because you see one photo and you're like, oh, this is real? And they just went on a hunt. And he wasn't too happy about this, apparently. He wrote in a note found beside a neatly folded boiler suit that his hikes in unique attire were happiness therapy, and that the media attention was not appreciated. He wrote that the media had 2 effects on him. 1, deprive a person of his harmless outlet, and 2, make others feel insecure. So take this away from the past 2 stories. There's some people that just want to go on some walks, you know? Respect that. Wear what you want. On to number 6, finding rats in a toilet bowl or other rodents. So, maybe you've heard that animals can show up uninvited to your home, but it's not always through a hole in the wall. You could hear some splashing noises in the middle of the night and find a rat doing some laps in the toilet bowl. You may blow this off because no way, right? But hate to break it to you, but yes way. Enough that it became an urban legend because it just sounds so unbelievable. Turns out, rats and other rodents are attracted to the undigested food found in feces, which leads them through the sewers. Then they may smell some of the food scraps in your kitchen sink and go towards it, taking a detour to the porcelain throne because it's easier to access. The plumbing for toilets is usually 3 inches in diameter or more, which is plenty for a rat. So if this does happen to you, the pros say to close the lid of the toilet and flush. The rat will either swim back down or drown on the way down. Both ways, you get rid of the problem though. So that's what the pros say. Anyways, on to number 5. Why there are no flowers in Green Park. So there's a story told in London that adultery is the reason behind there not being flower beds in Green Park. Apparently, King Charles II picked flowers for not only his wife but also many other ladies at that park. Once his wife heard about it, it is thought that she ordered all the flowers removed. She didn't hate the player, she hated his game. But apparently his game was too much even for her to try to rein in that reigning king, because he fathered at least a dozen illegitimate children. So flowers worked for him. Number 4, medical students being assigned relative cadavers. So, urban legend has circulated for centuries that people get a relative as a cadaver when they're studying bodies, or they can. Having to dissect into someone you share genetics with is never a comforting idea. I find dissection quite uncomfortable on its own. But this is a legend that has truly happened on more than one occasion. The most well-known occasion is from 1982 when a student at the University of Alabama School of Medicine in Birmingham pointed out to her instructor that one of the 9 cadavers given to the class could be her great aunt. And it was. Staff members at the medical school said another interesting point was that the student and her great aunt had discussed the relative merits of body donation to medical science. So they literally talked about the fact that her aunt could be dissected, and it happened to be her great niece doing the dissecting. The body was transferred to another location so that the student could focus on their work. But moving on, number 3, Cropsey of Staten Island. Cropsey was known in Staten Island as a boogeyman with a hook hand living in the woods by an abandoned mental institution. He would drag children out and carry them to the hospital, allegedly. He was a story parents told their children was not real because no, there isn't a man living in the woods kidnapping and disemboweling children, but children were disappearing. During the 70s and 80s, there were a string of disappearances. Andre Rand was convicted as a kidnapper and suspected as a child serial killer in many of these instances. He was the former custodian at Staten Island's Willowbrook State School before it closed. Rand was charged with first-degree kidnapping and suspected to be behind the disappearances of other children as well. Number 2, Charlie No Face, aka the Green Man. Still talked about in Beaver County is Charlie No Face, a man that roams the streets at night, sometimes called Green Man because maybe he was radioactive from an accident. Thrown away as a tall tale because of its unbelievable nature, this story is really true. The green on his face wasn't radioactivity, just a nose with injuries prone to infections. Ray Robinson was a man like any other, just someone who had a tragic accident when they were young. When he was younger, Robinson touched an exposed power line on accident at 8 years old that severely electrocuted him, resulting in his nose, lips, ears, eyes to be misshapen or just gone. He was raised from that point on in an isolated environment and took to walking the local highways when he wanted a bit of an escape. He was aware of the impression he could give off, so he went out alone at night. People heard the myth and would seek him out. The not nice people would pee in beer bottles to give to him or drive him to a random location to fend for himself, but the nice people would share beer and cigarettes with him, because Ray was just like anyone else. But on to last but not least, number 1 of strange urban legends, lawn chair aircraft. So, local lore circulates Los Angeles about a man who flew in a lawn chair attached to balloons, and it's true. A man by the name of Larry Walters tethered 45 weather balloons to a lawn chair he purchased from Sears and flew up and away. Kinda sounds like the movie Up, but this is a lawn chair. His plan was to travel 300 miles through the Mojave Desert using an air pistol to pop the balloons for a controlled descent. Unfortunately, he traveled to a much higher altitude than he anticipated, and then a gust of wind tipped the chair when it was about 3 miles up and he dropped the air pistol. He ended up getting too high, and so high that he disrupted air traffic as he flew an unworthy air machine. That man had a dream to fly with balloons, and he did do it, but his descent was dangerous as he was nearly electrocuted by power lines. He did survive the event though.